Good morning. Welcome to today's webinar on ensuring equitable services to non-public school children. I'm Teresa Vilner. With me today is Julie Cowell and Lisa Burks. Before we get started, I want to let you know this webinar is being recorded and will be available next week on our department's webpage. Also, if you have any questions, please feel free to use the chat box, and we will do our best to get your questions answered today. We are going to cover the requirements of the law for non-public schools as well as public schools, and we are going to cover the registration process. So we have a lot to go over, so let's go ahead and get started. A little background information: when the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, ESEA, was first enacted in the mid-1960s, Congress determined that federal education aid should be directed in an equitable way toward helping all children in need, regardless of the type of school that they attend. That principle of equitable services governed the implementation of ESEA from 1965 until No Child Left Behind, or NCLB, when certain funding formulas and set-asides began to erode equality. The new Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA, corrects those inequalities and improves the protection of services for non-public school children. A few of the new changes that will be coming about with ESSA are the new ombudsman requirement to help ensure that non-public school children, teachers, and other educational personnel receive services equitable to those in public schools. The SEA, or State Education Agency, must designate an ombudsman to monitor and enforce the Title I equitable services requirements. There are changes related to equitable service funding. The proportional share of funds for equitable services must be determined based on the total amount of Title I funds received by an LEA prior to any allowable expenditures or transfers. Funds allocated to LEAs for Title I services must be obligated in the fiscal year in which the funds are received. Each SEA must provide timely notice to non-public schools of the allocation of funds for Title I services that LEAs have determined are available for eligible non-public school children. Changes to consultation requirements. The statutory list of the consultation topics has been expanded, and we'll talk more about those in a bit. There is a new SEA compliance role. An SEA must provide Title I equitable services directly or through contract if the non-public school officials have requested that the SEA provide such services, or if they've demonstrated that the LEA has not met the Title I equitable services requirements. These provisions will apply beginning with the services provided in the 2017-2018 school year. Keep in mind, planning for the Title I program typically occurs in the preceding spring, so you'll need to incorporate these changes. Be sure to watch for guidance from our section on this information in upcoming listserv messages. Title I-A. The Title I program provides supplemental educational services so that all children have a fair, equal, and significant opportunity to obtain a high-quality education. To qualify for assistance under Title I, a student must reside within the attendance area of a participating public school located in a low-income area and be failing or at risk of failing to meet student academic achievement standards. In general, educational services for non-public school children shall be equitable in comparison to services for public school children and shall be provided in a timely manner. The Title I services for non-public school students must be developed in consultation with officials of non-public schools. NCLB strengthened these requirements by, among other things, requiring meetings with non-public schools and a written affirmation signed by the non-public school that the required consultation had occurred. The amount of Title I funds allocated to each participating public school attendance area is determined mainly on the basis of the total number of low-income students, both public and non-public, attending or residing in the area. Expenditures for non-public school students in each area generally are determined based on the proportion of students from low-income families residing in that area who attend non-public schools. The Title I services provided by the LEA for non-public school participants are designed to meet their educational needs and supplement the educational services provided by the non-public. These services may be provided by the LEA or by a contractor who's independent of the non-public school and any religious organization. Title I services must be secular, neutral, and non-ideological and supplemental in nature, not supplanting what the non-public school would otherwise provide absent the federal education services. What is consultation? Consultation with the non-public school is an essential requirement in the implementation by an LEA of an effective Title I program for eligible non-public school children, their teachers, and their families. Consultation involves discussions between the public and non-public schools on key issues that affect the ability of eligible non-public school students to participate in Title I programs. Effective consultation provides a genuine opportunity for all parties to express their views and to have those views considered. Successful consultation establishes positive and productive working relationships that make planning easier and ensures Title I services provided meet the needs of those eligible students. The goal in ESSA is to reach agreement on how to provide equitable and effective programs for eligible non-public school children. Only after discussing key issues relating to the provision of Title I services should the LEA make its final decisions on what services will be provided to eligible non-public school children, their teachers, and their families. Consultation is not an offer of services with no opportunity or discussion, or merely sending a letter to the non-public school explaining the intent of Title I. Okay, how to begin. Annually, an LEA must contact the non-public schools with children who reside in the LEA, regardless of whether the non-public school they attend is located in the LEA boundaries. One way to accomplish this is for the LEA to extend an invitation to the non-public schools and convene a meeting with them, at which the LEA explains the intent of Title I and the roles of the public and non-public schools, as well as provide opportunities for the non-public schools to ask questions. Consultation by an LEA must include meetings between the LEA and the non-public school and must occur before the LEA makes any decision that affects the opportunity for eligible non-public school children, their teachers, and their families to participate in Title I programs. A non-public school official shall have the right to file a complaint with the SEA saying the LEA did not engage in consultation that was meaningful and timely, did not give due consideration to the views of the non-public school, or did not make a decision that treats the non-public school students equitably as required. Consultation includes appropriate public school officials and representatives of non-public schools in their central administrative offices if that's appropriate. An LEA must meet with the non-public school throughout the implementation and the assessment of those Title I services. This consultation must include early discussions to prepare for the next school year so that there is a timely start of the Title I program at the beginning of each school year and throughout its implementation and assessment of services. And consultation must, at a minimum, address the following: how the children's needs will be identified, what services will be offered, how, where, and by whom the services will be provided, including a discussion of service delivery mechanisms that the LEA can use to provide the services, how the services will be academically assessed and the results used to improve services, the size and scope of the services to be provided, the proportion of funds allocated, and how that proportion is determined. The green text that you see on this slide and in the next few slides indicate the new statute language from ESSA that we will be incorporating. The method or sources of data used to determine the number of children from low-income families in participating school attendance areas who attend non-public schools, how and when the school district will make decisions about the delivery of those services, how, if the LEA disagrees with a non-public school official on the provision of services through a contract, the LEA will provide in writing the reasons why it chose not to use a contractor, whether the LEA shall provide services directly or through a separate government agency, consortium, entity, or third-party contractor, whether to provide equitable services to eligible non-public school children by combining funds generated into one or more pools of funds, when, including the approximate time of day, services will be provided, whether to provide services to eligible non-public school children by consolidating and using funds in coordination with eligible funds under other titles such as 1C, 2A, 3A, 4A, and 6B. If an LEA disagrees with the view of the non-public school regarding any of the issues subject to consultation, it must provide the non-public school written reasons why it disagrees. The results of consultation between the LEA and non-public schools must be transmitted to the SEA Ombudsman. Each LEA must maintain in its records and provide to DESE a written affirmation signed by each participating non-public school that the meaningful consultation requirements has occurred. The written affirmation must provide an option for the non-public schools to indicate with belief that timely and meaningful consultation has not occurred, or that the program design is not equitable with respect to eligible non-public school children. If the non-public school officials do not provide such affirmation within a reasonable period of time, the LEA shall forward the documentation that consultation has, or attempts at such consultation have, taken place to the SEA. When we talk about written affirmations here referring to the law, these are what we in our state call our non-public consultation forms. And these forms can be found on our federal programs webpage. The consultation form should be signed when consultation on the planning and design of the next year's programs have been completed. After the consultation form has been obtained, consultation continues throughout the implementation and assessment of those services. It should be an ongoing, continuous process. With the new ESSA changes, we'll be updating the consultation form soon, so be sure to check back on the non-public webpage of our DESE's webpage. I see we do have some questions coming in, which is great. Feel free to use that chat box as much as you need to. We'll work through the questions as we go along. We will also stay after the PowerPoint and continue to answer questions after the PowerPoint has been completed. So using the chat box, if you have a question, would be preferred instead of raising your hand, and we'll get to them as we go along. Back to the PowerPoint. Now we're going to look at the delivery of instructional services. Who is responsible for planning and designing the Title I program? After consultation with appropriate non-public school officials, the LEA must design a Title I program that meets the needs of the non-public school participants. The LEA is responsible for planning, designing, and implementing the Title I program and may not delegate that responsibility to the non-public school. Based on the needs of the children to be served, the LEA must provide an instructional program that not only supplements but also is well coordinated with the instruction that the non-public school children are receiving in their regular classrooms. The program should complement the classroom instruction and really shouldn't be a separate instructional program. Simply providing the non-public school with instructional materials and supplies is not an option available to the LEAs because it isn't either a proper Title I program implemented by the LEA, nor does it meet the equitability requirements. When should Title I services for non-public school participants start? Under the equitable services provision of the Title I statute, the Title I program for non-public school participants must begin at the same time as the Title I program for public school participants. That's why the required consultation really must begin early enough so Title I teachers can be hired, their materials ordered in for the Title I program to start at the beginning of each school year. Non-public schools have no authority to obligate or receive Title I funds. The statute clearly states that the LEA must maintain control of the Title I funds, materials, equipment, and property. No Title I funds may be paid to a non-public school. Where may Title I services take place? Title I services for non-public school participants may be provided at various locations, including the non-public school, a neutral site, or at the public school. The LEA must consult with the non-public before any decisions are made about the location of services. We occasionally get questions on what is meant by neutral space. The definition of neutral space is a site or space off public school grounds leased by the public school district for the purpose of providing those Title I services. It could be a site or space within the non-public school building or the facility on the non-public school property, subject to certain criteria. We do suggest that you consult with the school district's private attorney before implementing a neutral space option. A neutral space shall be under the control of the public school district when services are provided or when staff are present. Control is secured through a lease agreement for a specified number of days or hours. And content and all the components of the Title I programs and services are under the control of that public school district, including the assignment of students, both public and non-public, receiving services at that site. Space may be accessed in a way that minimizes movement through areas having significant religious presence. The 1997 decision by the U.S. Supreme Court allows Title I services to be provided by public school employees in non-public schools, provided the services and settings shall be secular, neutral, and non-ideological. We have additional guidance on the non-public page of the federal programs on our on neutral space if you want to go there to receive additional information. The Missouri Constitution bars direct and indirect use of public funds to benefit sectarian schools. Funds used must be only to meet the educational needs of qualifying participating children. Public funds may not be sent directly to the non-public school from DESE or from the public school district. Services would be considered equitable if the LEA spends an equal amount of funds, provides equal services and benefits, addresses and assesses the specific needs and educational progress on a comparable basis, provides equal opportunities to participate in program activities, provides non-public school students and their teachers with an opportunity to participate that provides reasonable promise of participating students meeting challenging academic standards, and provides different services to the non-public school if their needs are different from the public school. Materials, supplies, or equipment paid with public funds may not be provided to the non-public schools for regular program of instruction. Programs for non-public school students, regardless of their grade level, must begin at the same time again as the program for public school students. Allowable services to non-public schools would be dual enrollment classes, transportation to or from a child's home to the public school, before and after school programs, Saturday programs, professional development activities, necessary travel expenses and registrations for professional development activities. Professional development activities must meet the needs of the non-public school teachers. You can achieve this through a survey of the non-public school teachers, and merely inviting them to the public school for professional development would not be sufficient. I did want to mention just a little bit about dual enrollment. The Outstanding School Act of 1993 gives parents the option of enrolling their children in a combination of public and non-public schools to meet the state's compulsory school attendance requirement. This allows non-public students to spend part of their regular school day in the public school. During the time when the non-public student attends the LEA for supplemental instruction, the LEA needs to report that time in MOSIS. This applies to school days on the LEA's calendar. So if Saturday is not on the calendar, student ADA would not be counted. Unallowable services to non-public schools would be transportation between public and non-public schools with instructional funds, materials and supplies and equipment for non-public students' regular program of instruction, and reimbursement for substitutes for professional development activities. Evaluation. During consultation, public and non-public school officials should determine ways to assess the improvement in student outcomes that should be expected as a result of the provision of the Title I services that's being provided. An agreement must be made relative to the amount of progress that is to be expected. This is not restricted to standardized achievement tests. Tests in reading fluency and comprehension and the like can be used. The LEA should use standards that are aligned with the curriculum of the non-public school, which may or may not be the same as the LEA. And depending on the number of non-public schools, there may be more than one standard. After consultation, the LEA should establish the assessment it will use to measure the effectiveness against the agreed-upon standards. The state assessment or another assessment that is aligned to the agreed-upon standards, such as the assessment used in the non-public school, could be used. At a minimum, achievement in mathematics and/or reading and language arts must be assessed. Every year, the LEA, after consulting with non-public school officials, must determine what constitutes acceptable annual progress for the Title I program and how that progress will be measured. This decision must be made before the Title I services begin. It is not enough to just assess participation. The LEA must determine the effectiveness of the total program in raising academic achievement. If the expected annual progress is not met, the LEA, after consultation, must review its program and determine modifications it should make in order to improve the effectiveness of the Title I program in raising the achievement of non-public school participants. Basically what needs to be done next year in order to meet the students' needs. The LEA must conduct a program evaluation, and this evaluation, along with meeting minutes, sign-in sheets, and meeting agendas, are all required uploads that the LEA must do during their required tiered monitoring year. Allocating funds. The LEA must always maintain control of the program funds as well as title to all materials, equipment, and property purchased with federal funds. The LEA must initiate all contracts and purchase orders and directly receive all invoices. An LEA may not reimburse a non-public school for materials it has purchased or services it has obtained to implement a federal education program. Only the LEA may obligate and expend federal funds on behalf of that non-public school students and teachers. Thus, the LEA must purchase materials or obtain services on behalf of the non-public school students and teachers. An LEA may use funds to provide stipends to non-public school teachers. As with any allowable cost, the use of funds for stipends must be allowable under the program and reasonable and necessary for the program. For example, if professional development is conducted during after-school hours or maybe during the summer, stipends may be needed to compensate teachers for their participation outside of their regular employment hours. Also, stipends for non-public school teachers must be available on the same basis as for your public school teachers, and the stipends must be paid to the non-public school teachers for their own use. The stipends must not be paid to the non-public school or for the benefit of the non-public school. After that consultation has occurred with the non-public schools, the LEA determines which option or combination of options it will use to fund the Title I program for the non-public school children. One option would be on a school-by-school basis. This is where each school keeps the funds for services to the non-public school that generated those funds. Or pooling is an option. This would be combining funds allocated for non-public school children in all participating areas to create a pool of funds from which the LEA provides equitable services to eligible non-public school children who are in the greatest educational need for those services and resides in the participating public school attendance areas. In this option, the services do not depend on the amount of funds allocated for children in that school, but rather for eligible non-public children who are in the greatest need. Bypass. If a school district is prohibited by law from providing for the equitable participation of eligible children enrolled in non-public schools, or if the U.S. Secretary of Education determines that a school district has substantially failed or is unwilling to provide for such participation, the Secretary must arrange for a bypass. In this case, the U.S. Department of Education directly provides the equitable services to the non-public school students and teachers through a third-party provider. Currently, NESE, or NESI, holds the contract for this in the state of Missouri. LEAs on bypass are not responsible for providing Title I services to eligible non-public school children. This screen is showing you the current listing of Missouri school districts on bypass for the 16-17 school year. Any LEA who wishes to come off bypass should express that desire with a detailed plan and submit that to us at the Department of Education, and in turn, DESE submits the request to the U.S. Department of Education for review and consideration. Bypass is different than using a third-party provider to provide services because with bypass, the U.S. Department of Education contracts for services. Neither the LEA or the SEA are required to monitor these activities, and funds do not go through Missouri's Treasury. LEAs can contract with a third-party provider to provide services. And here, the LEA is responsible to make sure that the third-party provider follows all requirements of the law. When using a third-party provider, LEA should pay contracts based on written invoices that provide a detailed description of the same deliverables listed here. That would be a description of services, date services were performed, and the number of students or teachers served. An LEA may hire and pay non-public school teachers to provide supplemental instruction to non-public school children, but time spent providing such services must be separate from their contract hours with the non-public school. During the time they are employed by the LEA, the non-public school teachers must be independent of the non-public school and must be under the LEA's direct supervision and control. Let's look at the monitoring requirements as they tie to equitable services to non-public students. This is through the 3-year cohort monitoring system that DESE has structured for most of its programs. Districts must show evidence that they've conducted timely consultation. Again, this would be before the LEA officials made any decision that affected the opportunity for non-public school children to participate, with non-public school officials in the project planning stages. When monitoring, here we look for the completed public-private design forms and completed non-public consultation and participation forms. Districts must show evidence the non-public services were delivered in a timely fashion at the start of the school year, no delay or interruption in services for non-public schools for student instruction and/or professional development activities. Here we look for third-party contracts, calendar of services, and the daily schedule and lesson plans. Districts must show evidence the non-public students, teachers, and parents were provided the opportunity to participate equitably in activities. For the Title I program, only non-public school teachers of Title I students can receive professional development activities funded with Title I funds. And for monitoring purposes, here we look for the complaint procedures, non-public students' low-income verification, student academic eligibility criteria and the ranking lists, parental involvement activities, signed school and parent compacts, could be any fiscal records supporting equitable services, and professional development for non-public Title I teachers. Districts must show how the LEA consulted with the non-public school in assessing and evaluating their Title I services annually. Evidence sources must show that the LEA and non-public school determined the standards to be used to measure the effectiveness of the Title I program, what assessment will be used to measure the agreed-upon standards, and what constitutes the annual progress for Title I. We look for a review of student achievement data, establish baseline and target for measuring progress. We look for reviews of parent evaluation, a review of the strengths and weaknesses of the program, a review of the school parent compact, documentation of recommendations and revisions, and a list of the assessment tools used. Expenditures for services to non-public school children must be proportionate to the number of children from low-income families who attend a non-public school in a given attendance area. The proportional share must be determined based on the total amount of funds received by the school district for Title I-A prior to the district making any allowable expenditures or transfer of funds. The green text here indicates a change or an addition with the implementation of ESSA. School districts must obligate the funds reserved for services to the non-public school students in the fiscal year for which the funds are received. DESE must provide timely notice to non-public schools of how much funds have been allocated for services to non-public school students based on the information provided by LEAs. LEAs may determine that this share each year or every 2 years. And again, watch for more information to be coming out about this regarding if carryover is possible and what this new law will actually look like and how DESE will guide LEAs through the process. The allocation process for Title I-A. The allocation stays with the LEA in which the child resides. Title I is really the only program that provides services like this. Enrollment and deprivation is collected by the student's resident school district and attendance center. To look further at the allocation process, let's start with the Title I non-public report. The Title I non-public report is a summary of the information that the non-public schools enter into an electronic system in the fall. This report can first be accessed through our website, usually around February of each year. The report will provide a listing of which non-public schools the LEA will need to consult with. This is something you'll want to check every year because it can change from year to year, since it's going to show the non-public schools where children who reside in your school district boundaries go. The non-public report can also be found inside the ESEA consolidated application once it's opened on step 1 of the BOA, and that's what this green arrow is pointing to. Just a little background, in the June of every year, districts complete and submit this ESEA consolidated application to the Department of Education, to us here at DESE. This is the process for how LEA school buildings receive Title I allocations and where districts maintain their budgets for Title I programs in which their districts receive money for. While there are several pages in the application, at this time we're only going to look at a few of them. But really, to comply with the consultation requirements, waiting for the application to open to view the Title I non-public report is really too late. The application typically opens in June, well after when timely and meaningful consultation should have occurred. But you can access that Title I report either way, from our webpage or the application. But regardless of the way that you access it, this is a screenshot of a Title I non-public report. This example is using Moberly Public School District. Counts submitted in the fall of 2015 are used for the 2016-2017 school year, which means we do use prior year data. The enrollment and deprivation counts on this report are pre-populated into step 1 of the breakdown of allocation in the LEA's consolidated application. Some things to keep in mind. We only look at the LEA Title I served buildings. And the next screen, I'll show you where you can look to see where the LEAs have indicated that in their application. But we look only at the LEA Title I served buildings. Then we look to see if there's an enrollment, a deprivation, and if they indicated Y, which is yes to participate. So in this case, in this example, the LEA serves Gratz Brown Elementary, North Park Elementary, and South Park Elementary with Title I funds. South Park Elementary has an enrollment of 0, so we don't need to look any further here. North Park Elementary does have an enrollment of 35 students from St. Pius. However, 0 of those 35 students have an economic deprivation. So even though St. Pius said Y or yes to participate, money for services was not generated since there was not an economic deprivation, and therefore consultation will not need to occur. Gratz Brown Elementary does have an enrollment of 37 students. 18 of those students have an economic deprivation, and they have said Y or yes that they wish to participate. So Moberly Public Schools will need to consult with St. Pius. In this case, it's not just the 18 students who generated the allocation who could participate in Title I services, but any of the 37 Moberly Public School students attending Gratz Brown Elementary who have an educational deprivation. Also remember, with Title I, the money follows the child, which can go beyond your school district boundaries, even your county, which you can see in this case on this example by looking at Moberly High School. 9 of their students are attending Father Tolton Catholic High School in Columbia, and you can tell what county the non-public resides in by the first 3 numbers in the LEA code. This is a screenshot of step 2 of the breakdown of allocation in the LEA's application. And on this step, the LEA determines the eligible and participating attendance center. This is denoted by the served status on the right-hand side. So from here, we can tell that Moberly serves South Park, North Park, and Gratz Brown Elementaries. Only Title I served attendance areas will get services, and only grade level of those served buildings will receive services. So just a quick look back at the Title I non-public report, but this is how you know to only look at South Park, North Park, and Gratz Brown Elementaries. This screenshot is of step 3 of the breakdown of allocation in the district's application. This is where the LEA sets aside Title I funds for district-wide initiatives before they allocate money to the individual Title I served buildings. The LEA is required to apply the non-public equitable services requirement to certain set-aside categories. This is the first of 2 places that accumulate into what becomes the non-public allocation. The total non-public allocation comes from adding the non-public amounts from step 3 and Step 4 on the breakdown of allocation. And this amount is calculated for the public and non-public schools and determines the available funding for services to non-public school students. This screenshot is a bottom of Step 3 of the BOA, or the breakdown of allocation, and it shows you the total applicable set-asides for equitable services for the non-public students. So in this example, the $185.42 will be added to the non-public allocation on Step 4 that will result in the total non-public allocation amount. So this is Step 4, the breakdown of allocation. So once eligible attendance centers are determined, the LEA then distributes the allocation to the participating attendance centers. $1 per low-income student is determined, which then is computed into a non-public allocation. It is automatically computed for all of the eligible and participating attendance centers. Funds are generated on the basis of the number of low-income students who reside in participating LEA attendance areas and attend non-public schools. Of these students, the ones who are failing or most at risk of failing to meet the high academic standards are eligible for services. So the $185.42 that we looked at on the previous screenshot, which was from Step 3, plus here the $21,394.39 from Step 4, added together results in the total allocation for non-public services. LEAs on bypass would have a zero balance in the non-public allocation column, and it would say Title I bypass in that blank area above the chart on this slide. All right, we went through Title I pretty fast. Again, I will remind you the PowerPoint is available and will be available, and we can put notes with that if that's helpful, and the webinar will be recorded that you can refer back to if you need to. But now I want to switch gears and talk to you a little bit about Title II.A. The general purpose of Title II.A. is to increase the academic achievement of all students by helping schools and LEAs improve teacher and principal quality and to ensure that all teachers are appropriately certified. The Title II program provides services based upon the location of the non-public school. Under Title II.A., an LEA now has to set aside a proportionate share of funds for services to teachers in non-public schools based on its total Title II.A. allocation, not just on the funds it earmarks for professional development, which was the case under NCLB. Again, as this is a transition year from NCLB to ESSA, watch for more information to come available as we begin to make decisions on what this will actually look like in practice. Again, just like with Title I, no funds can go directly to the non-public school or for the general needs of the non-public school. LEAs must assess the needs of the non-public school teachers in designing that professional development program for them. If the professional development needs of the non-public school teachers are different from those from the public school teachers, the LEA, in consultation with the non-public school representatives, should develop a separate program. And looking at what high-quality professional development should look like, here are a few questions to ask. Does the professional development activity engage teachers over time? Is the PD directly linked to the higher levels of learning so that all children may meet the Missouri learning standards at a proficient level? Is the PD directly linked to the LEA and CSIP plans? Is it developed with extensive participation of teachers, parents, principals, and other administrators? Does it provide time and other resources for learning, practice, and follow-up? Is it supported by the LEA in building leadership? Does it provide teachers with the opportunity to give the district feedback on the effectiveness of participation in the PD activity? Activities to be carried out for non-public school personnel must be based on a review of scientifically based research and must be expected to improve student academic achievement. The LEA must submit their consolidated federal programs application in a timely manner so that the non-public schools have the option of attending professional development activities throughout the summer if they wish. Just like with Title I, services and benefits provided to non-public school students must be secular, neutral, and non-ideological. Services and materials that are purchased or provided on behalf of the non-public school must be necessary for carrying out the professional development activities. And just like with Title I, the school district remains in control of those federal funds and also maintains ownership of any materials or supplies that are purchased with such funds. Remember, all services must be tied to a needs assessment. Public schools are responsible for providing and paying for the services, and all requests for services must be discussed in advance. After consultation with the non-public school officials, the LEA determines which option, or it could be a combination of options, it will use to fund the Title II program. And like with Title I, there is the school-by-school or pooling option. If pooling, the LEA in consultation with the non-public school establishes a criteria to determine how services will be allocated among the non-public school students and teachers in different schools. Under the pooling option, services provided are not dependent on the amount of funds generated by students and teachers in that school, but rather by an amount of funds generated in total. The decision to pool must be decided at the beginning of the year when you're doing that initial consultation. You can't decide to pool at the end of the program year, and if at the beginning of the year a non-public school does decide to pool, and then as the year proceeds decides they no longer wish to continue to participate in the pool, such funds remain in that pool for use for services for the other non-public schools that were in the original agreement. We looked at the Title I non-public report, and this is a screenshot of the Title II non-public report. This is what we use in determining the Title II non-public allocation amount. Remember, these will be the non-public schools who reside in their public school district boundaries. Of the 2 non-public schools residing in Moberly School District boundaries, only St. Pius reported they wanted to participate in federal programs. You can see this by the Y in the participating in federal programs column. Again, watch for more information on how we will guide LEAs to determine how much money to budget on their Title II budget grid for non-public services, because as I had mentioned earlier, now with ESSA, an LEA has to set aside a proportional share of funds for services to teachers in non-public schools, but that amount is now going to be based on the total Title II allocation, not just the LEA's PD amount as it has been done in the past. So we quickly went through Title I requirements, Title II requirements. Again, keep asking your questions. We can put our notes out there that go along with the PowerPoint. Now we're going to switch gears. Julie's going to talk to you about the non-public registration process for the roles of both the public school and the non-public school. So bear with me just a minute while we get things switched over.
Okay, so hopefully everyone can hear me okay. We just kind of did a little switching around here. I am going to talk about the non-public registration and how our non-publics will register this year, as well as our public schools will play a process in that, or play a part in that process this year as well. We have just finished rewriting the whole non-public registration process. So this year when we open up the non-public registration, it'll look new to everyone. Same information, just a new look and feel to it. So we're going to just go over a general overview of the non-public registration process. The new online system will open October 3rd, so that's Monday, for non-public schools to report their enrollment and deprivation numbers and the deprivation method. The window for non-public schools to register will close on November 30th. The online system will then open December 1st for public schools to verify the data the non-public reported during the online registration. Please pay close attention to these dates. In the past, we were able to give extensions with the registration process, but that won't be able to happen with this new system because of the time frame needed to allow the public schools to verify counts. We also need to allow time for both the public and non-public to work together, if needed, to get all the counts correct. If a non-public school has not registered by November 30th when the window closes, that non-public will not be able to receive services for the following year. This is because we used the prior year data. So that November 30th date you will have from Monday, October 3rd through November 30th to enter your non-public enrollment counts, deprivation counts, and the method you used for determining your deprivation. The law requires public schools to verify counts and agree to the deprivation method used. So now with this new system, we will be able to capture that verification. The public school will either accept or decline the data entered by the non-public school. If the information is declined, the public school and non-public school will have to work together to verify and at the very end get everything accepted so the registration process is completed. Also note the new non-public registration and public school verification system has been developed to be functional with handheld devices in addition to your PCs and your laptops. So smartphones, iPads, tablets, you can use the new system on those as well. Okay, let's look at what the new non-public registration will look like for both non-public schools and public schools. You can start here where the big green arrow is pointing. It's pointing at the web applications. To start the non-public registration and public school verification process, you must first log in with your username and password. We mailed a letter this month to all the non-public schools on our mailing list. Non-public schools are asked to complete a DESE web system user ID pass request form to get their user ID and password established if you do not already have a username and password. If you already have a username and password for the non-public registration system, you should be good. Anyone, non-public schools, public schools, anyone at all, can go into the non-public registration and click on the View Public Applications button. You can look at other non-public school registration forms as well as your own, but with the View Public Applications, that's all you can do is view what's been entered. Also new this year in the new system, all numbers 10 and under will be suppressed and will only be noted with an asterisk when viewing through the public access. If you are the LEA, or if you're an LEA looking at another LEA, you would only be able to, you would only see an asterisk if the number is reported was 10 or fewer. When you log in with a secure username and password, you will see all numbers. There are different levels of authority in the non-public registration and public school verification system, just like all of our other systems. We have a view-only authority, a data entry, and an authorized representative. The designated user manager for your district or non-public school can make additions and changes for staff members to permit them to perform the functions described. Or the web system user ID request form can be submitted to DESE to gain the appropriate access. There is a specific form for non-publics to use and a specific form for public schools to use. The forms can be found at the green arrow at the top of the screen. After logging in, the programs listed under DESE Web Applications will only show the applications in which your username and password have authority to view. Non-public schools will click the link called Non-Public Registration Form to begin. This is the look of the new non-public registration online system. This is the home page. You can tell this because the word home on the left-hand side in blue text is highlighted in gray. Any notifications or announcements from our office to non-public schools will be posted here in the middle of the screen. From here, non-public schools will start the registration process by clicking Form Selection in the middle of the page or on the left-hand side in the blue text. By clicking Form Selection, you will get to the Form Selection page, which looks like this. The year will automatically default to 2016-17. However, you can use the down arrow on the year line to review prior year registration form data back as far as 2003-2004. To start the registration process, you will click on Create Initial, which takes you to the school information page. As you can see from the text on the left side in blue, the non-public registration process consists of 3 pages, which are the school information page, the enrollment summary page, and the student information page. Then you have the Submit Registration page. This page is pretty long, so we're going to break it up into 3 different screenshots so we can show you what all is included on this page. The header is something to pay close attention also as you work through the registration process. The status will let you know where you are in the process. We will talk later about what the different statuses mean. The school contact first name, last name, and position are required fields and must be entered. The position field is new this year. These 3 lines will be blank each year when you first fill out the initial non-public registration form. However, all revisions made during the registration period, the school contact information will carry forward. This part of the school information form will be pre-populated with the information from the prior year applications. You will be able to edit it, though, if needed. The contact information is next, and the street address, city, state, zip, and phone number are required fields and must be entered. The fax is an optional field. An email address is required for online registration, as this is the main mode of communication between DESE and the non-public. Also, automatic electronic notifications will be occurring throughout the non-public registration and public verification process between the public and non-public schools, so having correct email addresses is vital. For example, it is through this email that you will receive notification from the public school if your counts and deprivation methods have been accepted or declined. This is the bottom half, or the bottom portion, bottom third of the school information page. School type and grade span are also required fields. You will choose the appropriate type and grade span for your non-public by clicking the down arrows in each field. If your type of non-public school is not listed, you can choose Other, and then the system will give you the option to add it. Resident information is also shown here. This pre-populated information is on the school district in which your non-public resides. This part of the registration form will be pre-populated with the information from the prior year's application. So that makes up the school information page. Again, school contact, contact information, school type, and resident information. Once you have entered all the information, you will want to click Save. Save allows you to stay on the page, but will alert you if you have any errors. This is what a message would look like if you neglected to complete a required field. Data on the entire page will not save until all required fields are completed. In this case, the first name and last name was not completed. So by doing that, all of the other information I entered would not be saved until I enter these 2 fields. If you completed all required fields and click Save, you will see the message School Information Saved message in green. So green is good, and the red means, oops, there's still something you need to fix. Remember to click Save often in case the system times you out or if something happens and you get distracted. That way you can always come back to the registration and the data you entered previously will still be there. So getting the green go-ahead on the school information page. At this point, you would want to scroll down to the bottom and click Save and Continue. Keep in mind that clicking Continue does not save your information unless you've already clicked the Save. By clicking Continue, you are now at the enrollment summary page. This page is really the meat of the registration process. So this is the page that's really where you're really giving us all the information. Things to note. There is an instruction hot link, so be sure to click it for more information. Definitions are there now to also help you through the process. Definitions for federal program participation, for Title I participation, and for economic deprivation method. Federal program participation and school district information are required fields. The school district field will default to the resident public school district. So for the non-public St. Stanislaus, The resident public school district is Blair Oaks. St. Stanislaus sits within the district boundaries of Blair Oaks. First, you will want to start with answering the questions whether or not your non-public school wishes to participate in federal programs. If no, select No from the drop-down arrow, click Save, and then Continue. When asking if the non-public wishes to participate in federal programs, it means both Title I and Title II.A. So by clicking No here, it means you are declining all federal services and programs. We recommend non-public schools choose Yes to federal programs participation here because you can always choose to not participate during the consultation time with the LEAs. By selecting No to federal programs participation, the Title I participation field automatically defaults to No. Click Save, which keeps you on the current page, then clicking Continue, which will bring you to the Submit Registration page, where you will submit the registration form. If the non-public wishes to participate in federal programs, select Yes. Select Yes from the drop-down arrow. Again, by federal programs, it means Title I and Title II. Again, your resident public school district information will appear here. Then you must specify if the non-public wishes to participate in Title I. If the non-public selects No, the non-public will enter non-public enrollment counts for the resident school district only. The next step would be to click Save and then proceed to the Submit Registration page. The reason for this is because you said Yes to federal programs, so you may wish to participate in Title II.A, but not in Title I.A. Or if the non-public selects Yes, they wish to participate in Title I, they will select the method for determining the economic deprivation. Changing the economic deprivation method while adding multiple attendance-centered records under the same public school district will result in only the latest value being applied to that district. So to be sure to check all data to make sure it's accurate. So what that means is you can change your method of deprivation between public schools. If St. Stanislaus has students in Blair Oaks School District and Jefferson City School District, the method of deprivation could be different for each of those school districts, but within Blair Oaks School District, it can only have one method of deprivation for all of the attendance centers. So you want to make sure that you're checking to make sure your data is accurate. From the attendance center drop-down box, select the first attendance center in which the student attending the non-public school resides and enter the enrollment and economic deprivation counts. After saving the enrollment and economic deprivation counts for the first attendance center, follow the same process to add each additional building for the resident school district. The non-public school may choose Title I participation in each LEA in which their student resides. In order to generate funding, the non-public school must have economically deprived students who reside in a participating public school attendance center. Once you click Save, a summary will show at the bottom of the screen. So all of this in blue is showing you the summary of information that St. Stanislaus entered for Blair Oaks School District and Blair Oaks Elementary. After enrollment and economic deprivation counts for all attendance centers in the resident school district have been saved, select the next school district in which the non-public students reside, and then select the economic deprivation method for that district. A different economic deprivation method may be selected for each school district in which the non-public students reside. Then add each attendance center with enrollment and economic deprivation counts until the enrollment information page is complete. Note that all enrollment and economic deprivation counts for each school district are as of October 1st of the current non-public registration year. So on Monday, when the non-public registration opens, the counts that are entered for both enrollment and economic deprivation will be the counts as of October 1st. Be sure to select the Save button after each entry to save the entered data. Also be careful when adding LEAs because there are a couple of school districts in Missouri that have the same name. Make sure you have the appropriate school for your region. For example, there's a Miami R1 in Bates County and there's a Miami R1 in Saline County. It's the exact same name, so you're going to want to make sure and check that you are using the correct school district for your non-public school. This screenshot shows you what the definitions look like. It's describing all the methods that you can choose from. You can view those by clicking definitions to the right of the methods choice. Note that the LEA, after consultation with the non-public school, shall have the final authority to decide which method is used. If the non-public school participates in the school lunch program, they must use their free and reduced lunch count, which is method 1. When choosing method 3, the system will automatically calculate the total of the economically deprived students for each building based on the public school district's percentage of economically deprived students. So when you choose method 3, you will not be able to enter your economic deprivation count. The system will automatically figure it for you. Also, the non-public can choose a different economic deprivation method for each public school in which they have students attending. For Title I purposes, we use the enrollment and economic deprivation data based on LEA residents. Only students that live in eligible and participating LEA's attendance centers may receive Title I services as long as funds were generated by economic deprivation. Make sure the economic deprivation number has been entered correctly. Title I funding is based upon economic deprivation. All open fields require information even if it's a 0, so be sure not to leave anything blank or you will get a reminder like this one. So if you notice in grades 3, 4, and 5, nothing was entered. If you don't have students in those grades, you at least have to enter a 0. If everything is good, you will receive a notification like this in the green to let you know all your data was successfully saved. In this screenshot of the bottom part of the enrollment summary, it shows a non-public who has students attending more than one LEA. This is a summary of the data entered on the top part of the enrollment summary. You will notice the comment boxes, which allows the non-public, LEAs, and DESE to communicate back and forth during this registration and verification process. Once you have added all the LEAs and attendance centers for the students attending your non-public, check the summary part of the page to make sure it accurately reflects your student population. If no, go back to the top of the screen to either update LEAs attendance centers in the summary or to add LEAs attendance centers not in the summary. If so, you will click Continue. Also notice the print button. The print button here will only print off this summary page shown. There is a print button on the Submit Registration page that will print off all pages of the registration. I'll show you that when we get there. So I just want to go back to the comment boxes for a second. In this screenshot, you'll see that public district comments is grayed out, non-public comments are grayed out, and the DESE comment is open. The DESE we used, when we made the screenshot, we used a DESE login to make the screenshot, so DESE would be able to write a comment in there. And then it would save, and it would go to both the non-public side and the public school district side. If I were using a public school user ID and password, then my public school box would open up, and I could type in information, and then both the non-public and DESE could see that and see those comments. We would recommend that both, especially during the verification process, if the public school is declining, that you would put a comment in there. And then as the non-public is replying to that declined value, when they return it to the LEA, that they would add a comment as well. Okay, continuing from the enrollment summary page takes you to the student information page. You can also navigate through these pages by using the navigation on the left-hand side of the screen. The data we collect on this screen is not new and has been collected in previous years. Once here, you will report the number of graduates who received a high school diploma in 2016. The next section is the number of English learner students in preschool through grade 12 who were enrolled on the last Wednesday in September, whose English language proficiency was below that of grade and age level peers. The immigrant section is next, and it is asking for the number of eligible immigrant youths who have not been attending one or more schools in any one or more state for more than 3 full academic years. The data on English learners and immigrant will be used to distribute the Title III allocations to LEAs. The LEAs will then be able to provide services for non-public students or teachers. So again, on this screen, if you don't have those numbers, you would have to enter 0. Click Save to stay on the page and make sure you do not have any edits. Once you get the green bar saying your student information saved at the top of the screen, then click Save and Continue to move on. Which brings us to the form submittal page, the last page of the non-public registration process for non-public schools. Here you will check the box saying that as the authorized representative, you certify your school is in compliance with Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and that the information you submitted is true and correct to the best of your knowledge. Once you click the box, the Submit button will be activated, which looks like this. Now all that is left is to submit. The Submit button is only displayed for the person with the authorized representative authority. This submittal screen serves as a signature page in which the non-public authorized representative confirms the information reported is correct. If you have neglected to complete required fields, your screen will look like this when you get to the submittal page. It tells you that information was incomplete and on which page you need to go to, and the link will take you directly to that page. You will know that you have successfully submitted by the green bar at the top telling you that your registration submitted successfully. You can click the Print button, which will print off the entire report, including all the pages listed on the left side: status, school information, student information, and enrollment summary. It is very important that what is submitted is accurate. Non-public enrollment and economic deprivation data is used as part of the formula to determine allocations for federally funded programs. Once the allocations have been computed and distributed to the LEAs, corrections may not be possible. To be eligible for Perkins loan cancellation, teachers must be teaching full-time at a low-income school. DESE reports all schools, public and non-public, that have 30% or more economic deprivation. Also, DESE receives numerous requests from congressmen, federal agencies, private agencies, and the general public regarding the enrollment and deprivation in non-public schools. We have reports available on our website that allow these entities to query this information. Now we're going to discuss the new role of the public school in the non-public registration. The next step in the non-public registration process is once the non-public registration window closes, which will be November 30th, all LEAs who had children reported by a non-public will receive an electronic notification telling them this and asking them to log on to the Nonpublic Registration Public School Verification System to review and verify all data submitted by the non-public. So let's look at what that process will look like. Public schools will start by logging into DESE web applications and then choosing Nonpublic Registration Public School Verification. First, either the district's user manager or by completing the DESE Web System User ID request form will need to give the appropriate person for the district the proper user authority for Nonpublic Registration Public School Verification. This is the home page for the non-public registration process for the public schools. Any announcements or information DESE wishes to communicate with LEAs regarding the non-public registration process will be posted here for LEAs to view. To start the verification process, the LEA will have one page and one page only. Depending on the number of non-public schools who reported having students, the page may be longer for some LEAs than others, but there is only one page in the public school verification process. That page can be found by clicking the link on the left called Public School Verification. Using the example school we did in the non-public registration portion, we are showing you Blair Oaks as the LEA here. Remember, St. Stanislaus reported having students who reside in Blair Oaks School District and in the Jefferson City School District. So Blair Oaks would log into non-public registration public school verification, and this is what they would see. Here Blair Oaks will review all data and then in turn communicate with St. Stanislaus to verify each enrollment, 29 were reported, and make sure those 29 students actually reside in the Blair Oaks School District boundaries. To do this, the LEA will need to get addresses for all 29 students. Economic deprivation count, 5 were reported. Make sure that these 5 students actually are economically deprived. To do this, the LEA will need to see family makeup and income. The non-public low-income verification can be a spreadsheet that the non-public school has created that does not include the family by name. Family A can be used instead of the John Smith family. After verifying, the LEA will check the appropriate radial button for each area. Any areas in which the LEA declines or does not agree, a comment should be made in the comment box. In this example, the LEA only agrees with the economic deprivation method. After verification, they disagree with the enrollment count and the economic deprivation count the non-public provided. The LEA would click Save and then the Submit button. This Submit button actually submits the documentation. It's not like ePEGs where there is a submittal page, so be sure you're truly ready to submit when you click the Submit button here. This action will complete the LEA's verification process for the time being until the non-public receives notification that the LEA disagrees and allows them time to review, then change data and resubmit. Or review, make no changes, and then resubmit. Remember, if a non-public picked method 3, the system will automatically calculate the total number of economically deprived students from each building based on the public school district's percentage of economically deprived students. So in turn, if a public school declines that method 3, the system will default and the economic deprivation count will also be declined. Also, the Submit button will only work when the non-public school data is accepted. Until then, the Save button is the only button activated. Notice there's a print option here in case you want to print this form. And it's very important that public schools do not wait until the last minute to complete this verification process. When declining, the LEA and non-public will need to leave themselves enough time to work together on verification process so all data can ultimately, in the end, be accepted. The LEA will know it was successful in submitting by getting the green bar at the top of the screen that says, "Successfully submitted your selection." The LEA submits their responses, and the non-public will receive electronic notification alerting them that either all their data for the LEA they reported students in has been accepted, or some of their data for an LEA they reported students in has been declined. Non-publics will receive this email notification from each LEA they reported as having their students. If all LEAs accept all the non-public school data, the non-public registration process is complete, and the non-public would be able to go into the system and see the status to reflect this, which would be completed verification. This is what the completed verification would look like on the non-public registration side. However, if one or more LEAs decline or one or more pieces of data, the non-public and the public school will need to work together back and forth in order to get to a spot where all data can be verified and accepted. The status of the non-public registration form would be in process while you're going back and forth to verify all of the data. This is a good time to point out the activity log if we click on View. Didn't give me that. So if you click on View, it will give you all activities. Let's go a couple of pages. This is what the activity log would look like. It will tell you who created it, when the date and time it was created, when it was submitted, and then that it was in process. So that in process means that the non-public or the public school went in and started the process of verification and probably accepted and declined some of the values and sent it back. And it eventually got to a completed verification state. You can also print this page. There's a print feature on this page if you are interested in printing it. When the non-public goes back into the system, so the public school has declined some values during their verification, when the non-public goes back into the system to update their data, the screen will look like this. You can see the values that were declined. Hopefully in a real environment and not a test environment, there would be comments there from the public school, so that in some of our larger districts there would probably be multiple buildings listed for the non-public, so to know which numbers were declined, which numbers, in which buildings the enrollment counts were declined, or in which buildings the deprivation counts were declined. So hopefully there would be a comment. The non-public will need to click the button Update Declined Values to update the values declined by the public school. When they click the Update Declined Values, it will take them to the top of the page again to make those. They would have to click on the school district and then pull up the attendance center, and then they could change the numbers or the method or any of the numbers for that building. Okay, let's talk about the statuses for a little bit. Created status. This form is created with possibly saved data that has not been submitted yet. The form is still open for updating for users with the proper access during the registration upon enrollment period. The submitted status. The form has been submitted by the non-public user. It can no longer be updated within the registration enrollment period. Any changes to the information submitted will have to be handled by creating a new form revision. Once the registration enrollment period is closed, the public school district can only review or verify the information submitted by the non-public school. So I think there's some important things in there to point out. Once you submit your initial form, you can't make changes to your initial form on the non-public side. However, as long as it's before November 30th, you would be able to create a new form, which would be a revision. You'd be able to create a revision and make changes in the revision. And the public school will verify the last submitted version by the non-public school. Once, and we've talked about this once before, but I want to mention it again. Once the November 30th comes along and the non-public window is closed, anybody who has not submitted a non-public registration form would not be allowed to submit a non-public registration form. That window is closed. However, if the public school has declined values to one that has already been submitted, then you would be allowed to make revisions after the non-public window is closed. Okay, the in-process status. A registration form has been submitted, enrollment summary values declined by one or more public school districts referenced in the registration form. In this state, the declined registration form values can be updated by the non-public school and returned to the public school district for further review. And then completed verification status. A registration form has had all submitted enrollment summary values accepted by all the public school districts referenced in the submitted registration form during the open public verification period. The registration process is completed at this point. A completed verification status can also be given to a registration form by a DESE super user after the public school verification period is closed with all accepted or some declined values. Let's talk about what happens if the public school doesn't go in and verify during the open window period. So if the non-public has submitted their registration form and the public school has not gone in and verified those counts, by the end of February, when the public school verification period closes, a DESE super user will go in and accept all of those counts. And those will be the counts that will be in place for that school year, both on the enrollment, the economic deprivation, and the deprivation method. So let's say what happens if the public school declines some of the values and that information gets sent back to the non-public school. They received their email, but they didn't go in and ever make any changes or submit it back to the public school district. At that time, when the public school window closes, a DESE super user will go in and complete the verification with the declined values. If the value of enrollment is declined, then in essence that non-public school has decided not to participate in federal programs. If the deprivation counts are declined, same thing. There isn't a deprivation count, so there wouldn't be an amount that had generated funds. So by not doing anything and following up, DESE will make that next step. This is a screenshot of what the federal program's web page looks like. To get here from DESE's main web page, look for the Office of Quality Schools. I say it's down a little bit further than what you're seeing here, or it's down about midway through the home page. I say it looks like recipe cards, and it'll say Department first, and then you will choose Office of Quality Schools. That's the office which the federal programs section is located in. Once you click on Office of Quality Schools, you'll click on Federal Programs, which will be under Quality Schools and the green link there. And then you can see the green arrow pointing to non-publics. This will be a valuable page for you to bookmark because we have a lot of very helpful tools and guidance for you on this page. Okay, so that was kind of a quick overview of all the information, just information about non-public requirements, and then about our non-public registration process, our new non-public registration process. For more information, you can contact Lisa or Teresa or myself. You can see our contact information provided there. We will stay online for several more minutes in an attempt to answer any questions that you might still have. And also remember that this webinar is being recorded and will be available next week on our website along with the questions that are popping up in the chat box. Okay, so Jill Gold has asked a question, should I have already received information regarding economic deprivation? If you're a public school district, Jill, you would not have received economic deprivation to verify for this year yet. That won't happen until December 1st. Someone asked where St. Joe's School District is located. It's in the northwest corner of the state. And then Rick Mueller asked, if we're not participating in any federal programs, do we need to provide economic deprivation counts for LEA verification? If the non-public school is not participating in any federal programs, remember at the very beginning, I know it's hard, but at the very beginning they're gonna click no to federal programs participation, and it's going to take them to the submittal page to submit. That would be the only thing that they click is the no. Paul Meyer's question is, do we have to verify all non-public counts? Actually, he's just verifying, and yes, you are correct. You still will have to verify the non-public counts regardless of deprivation. Okay, so Jill, if you're a non-public school, you are determining, I mean, you should be collecting that information about what your deprivation counts are. If you are part of the public, or if you're part of the school food services, then you should have done the surveys for free and reduced lunch. There are 4 different options, and you can look at those. There are 4 different options that you can use to determining your economic deprivation. So you'll have to use one of those to determine what your economic deprivation is for your non-public school. Okay. Someone asked a question, if they have one student that has economic deprivation in a district, what would the results be in terms of Title I? If that one student is in a Title I served building attendance area, it comes down to the same dollar per student. So the dollar per student at the public school, it would look the same as be the same dollar per student for the non-public student. I can't give you a dollar amount. It would be different in each LEA or in each attendance area, but the same dollar per student for the students in the public school would be what the non-public school student would receive. So I just want to check if we missed any questions. If you put a question in the chat box and we haven't answered it yet, if you want to let us know that real quick, we'll try and get that answered for you. Okay, so Tricia put a question out there on how the public school determines economic deprivation from the list of family incomes they are given from the non-publics if the non-public does not participate in the school lunch program. If you look at those methods, the non-public is going to have to, they either can use the non-public or the school lunch program survey. They can use their own survey if they're not participating in school food services, but that survey is going to have to include some of the same information. Or they can also use, they can choose to use the economic percentage from the public school district from which they are reporting students if they don't do school lunch services. So in that case, you would still just look at their surveys and determine it just like you would through the school or the school food lunch program. Right. Clark, I would say you could try Chrome, but I'm guessing that Internet Explorer is your best option. And so Greg says some of the local public schools will not allow us to use their number ratios, etc. Does not seem equitable. That is, I mean, they do have that option to, it does come down to the public school gets to make the final decision on that. And it has to make sense to use those numbers. If the non-public school, I think to keep in mind, if the non-public school is using the school food lunch program, those are the numbers you have to use. If you're not, you can do a survey of your students, and then the local public school district is an option, but they would have to agree to those numbers, and it would have to be equitable in that case as well. Okay, so I'm just watching the clock at the bottom of my computer. It's 10:44. If there are no other questions, we're going to sign off when it switches over to 10:45. Looks like someone's typing, so we'll hold on here for just a second. Okay, Chris. No, if the non-public school participates in the school food lunch program, they have to use the free and reduced lunch count for that. It's not if the public school uses the free and reduced lunch form. Okay, if there are not any further questions, remember that the webinar has been recorded and will be posted next week on our website along with all the questions in the chat box. And you have Lisa, Teresa, and myself. You have all of our phone numbers. If you have questions, you can give us a call. We will open the non-public registration on Monday, October 3rd for non-public schools. Please, please, please remember to get in there and complete your information no later than November 30th. And on December 1st, the public school verification will open, and it will be open through the end of February. If you have questions during that process, please give us a call. Thanks for listening today.